Hello, welcome. Glad you're able to join us. People are starting to roll in. I'll give a few more seconds here for a few more people to join us before we jump in and get started. Glad to have you join us this morning. Bright and early. Hope you have your cup of coffee handy and settle in for a great bunch of topics this morning. My name is 𝙩𝙤𝙨 and I lead Minnesota Crossroads Career Network. I'm grateful to have a team of volunteers that do a number of other things with us as well, but really glad to be able to host this morning. We've got a great morning lined up for you. We have, I'll do a brief welcome and introduction here. Then we have a short video that I know you're going to be able to hopefully get inspired by and gain some great insight. And then we have our main presenter that you all came to see, 𝙈𝙚𝙨 𝘾𝙤𝙢𝙢. I'm so glad to have her here this morning, and she is going to be able to answer your questions about networking or talk about the most commonly asked questions about networking. And she is well versed in it, so I'll describe that as I introduce her later. But very glad you're here today, and I hope that this morning is worthwhile for you. You know, our hope with Crossroads is to provide the best help and resources for your job search as we can. But while we also point you to the hope and encouragement in Jesus Christ. You know, there's a cliche that's often used that the Lord will never give you more than you can handle. And people that say that mean well, trying to encourage someone that's facing challenges that they have the strength to overcome. The thing is, that idea is not really supported by Scripture. You know, and for most of us, there certainly are times that we face in our lives that are beyond our ability to handle. The Bible does say, though, that when we trust in the Lord, He will never leave us and never forsake us. In the book of Isaiah, there's a great passage that makes it clear that it's His strength and not ours that gets us through the storms in life. It says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, He increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Now, that's some great encouragement and something I need to remember when I'm out shoveling snow and I'm getting pretty weary. But when you face challenges in life, like a job loss and having to go through the job search process, put your trust in God and lean into His strength. And when you feel like your own strength is growing thin, He promises He'll never leave you. Let me open up in a word of prayer here, and then we'll have a short video followed by our main presenter, 𝙈𝙚𝙨 𝘾𝙤𝙢𝙢. Lord, we thank You for these times that we can get together, even if it's virtually for now, but we just pray that You use it for Your purposes, that everything that's shared here today is something that can be helpful, inspirational, or encouraging, or useful from a tactical basis to be able to help people along their path. You know everyone's situation, Lord, better than we understand them ourselves. And we pray that You provide each person with what they need today. In Jesus' name, amen. With that, I am going to share my screen here, and we have a great video that I know will be worthwhile for you this morning. Let me get this going.
They'd be like, "She's really fast," or "She runs track." That was always the adjective or the description that came after the introduction of me. I liked being that person. And then all of a sudden it was completely stripped away from me, and I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know, who am I? Every training cycle is about figuring out, how can I break my body Texas sun, 100 degrees. If you put your hands or knees on the track, you'll probably get burned. You're crossing the finish line and your teammates are pulling you off the ground, and then the next rep, you're pulling them off the ground. And then we strength train. A whole bunch of Olympic lifts, power cleans, box jumps, front squats, back squats, sled pulls. We push ourselves to the limit, breaking your body apart and coming back the next day and doing it over and over again. In 2016, when we were at the Olympic Games and we were running the prelim of the women's 4x100 relay, our second to third leg dropped the baton. I was standing there at the anchor leg waiting to receive a baton that was not coming to me. And in that moment, I had that thought of like, wow, I've trained what feels like your whole life for a moment that now seemed to be gone and stripped from me within the blink of an eye. So it takes you to a place of realizing that you have to make what you do worth it. As the story goes, we got to rerun and run by ourselves, and we made the final, and we came away with a gold medal in the 4x100 relay. I was ecstatic. I was on top of the world. But I was coming back to Austin, Texas, knowing that I wanted my life to look different. I didn't want to be the same college girl. I didn't want to keep being around those same group of people. I didn't want to keep partying. I didn't want to continue being that person. But I was also scared. I was scared of feeling alone and lonely and not having anyone and not knowing what I was going to do next. I got invited by my friend, Emmanuel Acho. He'd actually be mad at me for saying friend, by my best friend, Emmanuel Acho, to come to a game night. And I was hesitant at first, and I was like, okay, I'll come to this game night. And I walked into a room full of people who were complete strangers to me, but that was going to become my new spiritual community, a community of people who have very little in common besides our love for game nights and our love for Jesus, who were going to become exactly what I needed. On January 27, 2018, at the end of a race, I ran into a wall, stopping, and completely ruptured my Achilles tendon. The Achilles is the strongest tendon in the human body, and you need it to do literally everything. Walk, jump, crawl, climb stairs, stand up, sit down. I had it surgically repaired, but I was being told, hey, you might never be the same runner that you were ever again. This may be a career-ending injury for you. I was angry at God, at the sense of, I thought this is what I was supposed to be doing, and if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then why did you take it away from me? My identity was built in track and field. All of a sudden it was completely stripped away from me, and I didn't know, who am I? I'm so independent and used to doing everything completely on my own, and I was at a point where I had to learn to ask for help. And it was tough, but I was right where I needed to be. For the first time, I realized that I was surrounded by people who believed in me. And not only did they believe in me, they believed that God had a plan for my life and that he was still going to be faithful through it all. I'd never been in a place where every single one of my people that I hung out with and talked to were someone that I could also be like, hey, I need you to pray for this, and they actually would, not just say that they would. And it also made me realize that this is why we're supposed to live our lives together like this, so that when one person in your community is hurting or is fallen or can't fight their battle on their own, that you have 10 or 15 or 5 or 3 or 25 people there who will step up and fight the battle for them that they can't fight for themselves. And that was the beginning of me really picking myself up and putting myself back together. Just because something happened that steered me away from what I thought was the path of least resistance doesn't mean that God changed, doesn't mean his plans for my life had changed. It just means that I had to go through a little bit of something first. I've realized that I've been in a tough situation that I didn't think that I could make it out of, or I was so unsure of how I was going to make it out of. And I look back at it and I was like, wow, that was really easy. And it was God's hand in all of it. Prior to my injury, I was always focused on breaking my body down. And now I had to focus on putting my body back together. When I get on the track, it's like, you did not wake up today to be mediocre. That's the talk that I'm giving to myself. You can do this. You only have one more rep. Take it every 50 meters. I wore my I am second bracelet. It would always just be there as like a, you're not doing this for you. This is not your thing that you're doing, and like you have to keep going. I think the sweetest part of community is the ability to be vulnerable with people and let them see your true self and who you really are. And without Jesus Christ, I would not be who I am, I would not be where I am, and I would not be doing what I'm doing. Everything in my life has become solely because of who Jesus is and who he continues to be. My name is 𝙈𝙚𝙨 𝘾𝙤𝙢𝙢𝙢𝙤, and I am second.
Wow. I have watched this before, but, for so many of us, we get our identity by what we do. And when that's taken away, it really can be hard emotionally to figure out, who am I then? I don't know about you, but when I saw those stitches on her heel, that just gave me the gut was creepy. I'm not good with pain, but in any case, getting your identity from someone else, from something else greater than ourselves, and having those people around you that can support you and can encourage you and pray for you is so critically important anytime you're going through any kind of challenge in your life. And so, I'd encourage you, if you don't have someone, get involved in the church, find people though that are there for you, because I think we're meant to do this life in community, not individually. But with that, I am really glad to be able to introduce Marsha Bollinger. If you don't know Marsha, I think most people do, but Marsha has been a recruiter for many years, a strong HR background before that. She has a PhD. She's written 3 books, the 20-minute networking meeting, winning the executive interview, and Make the Jump, reinvent your career into the nonprofit sector. And she is well-versed in that. Her firm, Bollinger Leafblad, is focused on civic and nonprofit leadership roles. And they have been very well known and done a tremendous job. But Marsha knows of what she speaks. And so I'm very glad to have her be able to present this morning and answer questions regarding networking. And so Marsha, thank you for joining us, and I'll leave it to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Harry. There were so many things I'm still processing from the video, but 𝙈𝙚𝙨 said, she didn't wake up every morning to be mediocre. And all of you share that today. You woke up and decided to participate in community to talk about the topic of networking. It's not an easy topic to face and think about enhancing your skills, but here you are. So hats off and congratulations before we even start for being part of today's discussion. And in particular, I think it's important, before I forget, to say thank you to Harry for his long time expertise, wisdom sharing, walking beside folks in transition at Crossroads for many, many years. And he is well known both for his recruiting expertise and his guidance to people in their career transition journey. So thanks to Harry, and thanks for all of you being here today. We're talking about some of the most common questions that are out there about networking. And trust me, I've gotten those questions in 25 years of executive search. Recruiters are people who get a lot of calls from folks in transition seeking to network. And over the years, I've always said yes to those calls. And I'm probably 2,000 networking meetings into it. And I became a student of networking probably around 1,000 networking meetings when I started realizing there were certain things that folks did that enhanced the meeting. There were certain things that people did that led the person on the other side of the desk to want to help and equipped them to help. And there were certain behaviors that took away from the result that the person in transition was seeking. So based on all of that, I love talking about networking and sharing from my background whatever I can that will be helpful to all of you. So thank you for being in conversation with me today. The answer to the first question about networking is yes, definitely. That's right, do it. And the question is, how important is networking? Critically important. The most important thing you can do in your job transition. And as a matter of fact, if you have to log off in 1 minute, take this with you. The most important thing that I can impart this morning is if you do only one thing different as a result of our discussion today, do more networking and less of everything else. The proportion of activities that you have as part of your transition add more to the networking side. Why do I say that? Because statistically speaking, you are highly likely to get your next job through your network. That bears out in studies across the country and locally here in the Twin Cities. The job transition coaching organization Navigate Forward, just in the past few days, put forward a study of all of the people that they've been coaching in transition over the last year or so, and 85% of those folks landed their next job through networking. Lee Hecht Harrison, which is probably the biggest job transition coaching organization around the country, Outplacement, continues to do studies of how people land their next job. And there was one point I did a session for them a year ago, 2 years ago, and that quarter, the study showed that 90% of all of the folks that were working in job transition with them landed through networking. And lastly, I went back to the original, What Color Is Your Parachute? The original book about job transition, originally written, shockingly, in 1970, and since 1975 has put out a new annual edition every single year. It is the Bible of job transition. And in 1970, the author Richard Bowles says, the most important thing you can do in your job transition is to network. In 1970. So longitudinally, we know that you are likely to find your next job through networking. And you know what? When you break it down, it makes sense. There's really, in my mind, there's really only 3 ways to get a new job. The first of them is to apply online and send in resumes. Someone called me to network last week and they said, Marcia, I've sent in 300 applications. I've applied online 300 times and I've only heard back from 4 or 5. And my response was, because that's about it. When I send in an application online, am I one of 400 applicants? Is it really a job opening? Has it already been filled? There are so many questions and so many unknowns, and I don't know how many people are applying along with myself. It's almost never the most senior ranking executive looking at resumes. It's usually the intern in the HR department that kind of does the first pass of the online applications. So if I'm expecting somebody to be highly skilled in seeing how my unique background translates to a job, that typically doesn't happen in online applications. So I don't care how many code words and all the fancy stuff I want to do to try to get myself through. Statistically speaking, I am very unlikely to get my next job through online applications. 10% likely at the very, very best. The second way that I might land a job is through recruiters like Harry's search firm or my firm, Ballinger Leafblad, or other national or regional executive search firms. And again, it's only a small, I love my profession, but I realize that only a very, very small percentage of people get their next job through an executive search firm, because search firms are typically, we're time consuming and expensive compared to other ways of recruiting. It takes a lot of time to work with a search firm, to get them up to speed, to tour the facility and meet the executives and talk to the board and write the profile and understand the organization and do the research and find the candidates and make the calls and vet and assess and all of those things. So when an organization hires a search firm, they've usually got really specific experiences and background and needs in the job that cause them to have to go to an outside resource to help with recruiting. So again, and if you were a candidate on a search at our firm anyway, and I think most, we are contractually obliged to call 150 or 200 fully qualified candidates and vet down to the top 6 and then down to the top 4. So statistically speaking, again, like online, the odds are long, right? And so again, there's a small percent chance that I'm going to get my next job through online, and a small percent chance that I'm going to get my job through an executive search firm or a recruiter. If I am networking with someone and I have a great conversation, and we'll talk about how to have a great conversation, and they, in the back of their mind, think of someone that they know, doesn't have to be in the meeting, and it usually isn't, it's the next day or a week later or something like that, that has an opening or mentions that their company might be hiring, and I've conducted myself in such a way that this person bucks forward my resume, I'm a pool of one and someone's vouching for me. I love those odds. And that explains why over time and over sector and over function, most people will land their next job through networking. So that's the truth. And that's the answer to the question, how important is networking? Critically important, vitally important. If you do only one thing, network. Another question is, how do I get started with contacting somebody to network? Because, hey, networking is not hitting, will you link with me? Okay. That might be the start of a network, of a relationship, or it might be reconnecting with someone. And by the way, I encourage all of you to please link with me on LinkedIn. I love to stay in touch through LinkedIn with folks, so please do that. But hitting will you link with me is not networking. Networking is a meaningful conversation. So it's a one-on-one conversation, and I'm going to need, it's incumbent on me to make the request to network. You might have some networking that takes place with, you know, your BFF from college, and you're having dinner together, and you talk in the midst of that conversation about your job search. But the vast majority of your networking, you know, I run out of friends my first week. You know, I've got some friends and things, but eventually my networking starts to be contacting people I used to work with, contacting people I've met at a conference, contacting a friend of friend and it's a new individual. So the question that gets asked of me is, how do I go about asking for that meeting? That's the first hurdle. So let's talk about how I might do that. Nowadays, an email is a fine introduction to request a networking meeting. And the subject line might be referred to you by Harry Urschel. The subject line might be requesting a networking meeting suggested by Marcia Ballinger. So make sure that the connection is pretty front and center, if there is one. And we can talk about what to do if there's not. In your request, Marcia Ballinger suggested that I contact you as someone with an outstanding background in manufacturing engineering here in the Twin Cities. If Marcia said something positive about that person, and usually people do, make sure you mention it. Marcia said that the two of you had a great working relationship and even went to the sales conference 2 years in a row. So make a positive connection and reiterate who referred and why. The second paragraph might be, I've got 20 years of experience in the field. I would love to learn more about your background and the types of positions that you've had. I'd love to meet, and here are a couple things that are super important, at your convenience in the coming weeks. Do not ask, so today is Thursday. I bet I get a networking request from someone who wants to meet with me yet this week. I will never take a networking meeting with the disrespect of someone who needs to meet with me within 72 hours. It's not realistic. People have full-time jobs. So give someone several weeks to put something on the calendar. Be really respectful of time and schedule. So I'd love to meet with you anytime in the next several weeks. You could say, here are a number of options if you choose, but give them several options over time. Number two, if it's an in-person request, and maybe it is, I will bring the latte of your choice to your office. You meet them at their office, not, and again, it's going to happen within a week. I promise you, someone is going to call me and say, I know you're in St. Paul, but boy, I'm out way here in the West End. Could we meet midway, somewhere around Minnetonka? No way are you going to ask someone to drive, 35 minutes closer to you because of distance. You're going to make it a Zoom meeting, or you're going to drive to that person and make it convenient for them. So a time that's convenient for them and a location that's convenient for them. Again, if you're meeting them in their office, can I bring you a soft drink or the coffee of your choice? And thank them very, very much in advance for considering the opportunity to meet with you. You are only going to ask for 20 minutes of their time. Specifically say, I'd love to meet for no more than 20 to 30 minutes of your time. And attach your resume or your bio showing your background. That's a clean, crisp, positive way to request a networking meeting. And will you get 100% positive responses? No, you won't. Networking is never about 100%. Networking is about most of the people saying yes, most of the time. You might get referred to someone who is, leaving the country on a 6-month sabbatical. You might get referred to someone who, unbeknownst to your referral source, is retiring next week. You might get referred to someone for whom networking is uncomfortable and they don't do it. That's okay. It's a numbers game. And so we're playing numbers and asking a lot, knowing that activity breeds activity, and most people will say yes with a gracious, thoughtful, positive request. Now, it's possible you might not know the person. and someone pops up on LinkedIn, they've got a really interesting background, go ahead and try networking. And there are times that make sense where someone has what appears to be a job that would be highly appealing to you. You can try several things. You can say, we have 38 LinkedIn networks in common, and your background looks really interesting. Approach it never from an ask, but always from a respect and an admiration. As I look at your background, I really respect the work that you've done. I respect the organizations you've been with. I admire the career that you've had. I see that you've done some time in consulting. That's really interesting to me. So using the words respect, admiration, some questions to learn from, thinking of the conversation as part of your wisdom-seeking tour. I'll say yes to those meetings, even if I don't know the person. If they have a thoughtful reason for seeking out my counsel, yes, I'll gladly take those meetings. So thinking about those as characteristics of a really strong request will get more yeses more of the time. So that's the answer to how do I ask for a networking meeting? A lot of people then start to wonder, I've got the meeting and I'm feeling the pressure to run a really good meeting. So let's talk a little bit about some of the attributes that make for a networking meeting that works for you and also feels really positive to the person on the other side of the table, because at the end of the day, that's the person on whom we're focusing. So we only asked for 20 or 30 minutes. And we only need 20 or 30 minutes. The purpose of a networking meeting is an introductory conversation. You will almost always leave wanting more, and so should they. And that's what you want. It's not an interview. Even if you're talking to Harry or myself or any other recruiter, if you're networking, you're networking. Nobody is secretly interviewing during a networking meeting. Networking is to do three things. Networking is to learn something. Networking is to contact someone from whom you sincerely want to learn their perspective. And that's going to be really critical, to know what you want to learn from that person. Also, networking is about expanding your network. It really is. So you're going to want to come out of that meeting with an idea or two about how to expand your network. And it might be names of people, it might be names of other places to connect, but that's going to be the second objective of the meeting. And then the third objective for the meeting is to conduct yourself in such a way that you have created an ambassador. And an ambassador is someone that, as mentioned, a week later hears about an opportunity and thinks, I talked to somebody really sharp, and forwards your materials, or bucks forward a job description to you and says, use my name when you apply. That person is an ambassador for you. And what it takes to create an ambassador is more how you run the meeting and how you interact with that person so that they feel comfortable sending you on to others. I'm more than happy to recommend other people for you to talk to if I'm convinced that my colleagues and friends are going to enjoy talking to you. So we're going to think a lot about how do we conduct ourselves in the meeting so that I've created an ambassador. I will tell you this, the likelihood that the person sitting on the other side of the desk has a job for you at that moment is about zero. In 25 years of networking, I never have a job for the person, and I'm in search and we've got jobs. The likelihood that the person has a job for you just at that moment for your specific background is infinitesimally small. And That's how we should think about it. We are making a friend, a colleague, we are learning, and the jobs happen afterwards. I mean, maybe at the end of the meeting, they say, boy, that person is so sharp, let's walk down the hall and I'd love to introduce you to someone. Maybe it's like I say, next week. Maybe it's a month later when the person is in conversation with someone at another company who mentions something and the connection is made. So never walk into a networking meeting with the idea that I'm coming out of this networking conversation with a job. As a matter of fact, I tell folks, that's a word not to use. Do you have a job for me? Can you find me a job? Where are the jobs? You have a job? Never use that word. Asking somebody to find you a job makes people squeamish and uncomfortable. But asking for their wisdom, learning from them, and acting in such a way that the next day, week, month, they think of you when they hear about a possible job, that's where the positive happens. That's where the magic happens. So what is my objective for the meeting? To learn something, to grow my network, and to act in such a way that I can build an ambassador, a cadre of ambassadors. The author, David Maister, wrote a phenomenal book about marketing oneself and marketing actually small businesses. And he says, if there are 100 people in your market who will recommend you, that's sort of the pinnacle, that's the objective. And I think that relates to networking too. If I can think of, are there 100 people in my field who know of me, who like me, who would refer me? That's what I'm seeking to build, is a community. And I'm going to do that by a learning and collaborating approach. So I've already talked a little bit about the question, how long should I plan for each networking meeting? Well, you know, I have an opinion about that because I wrote the 20-minute networking meeting, but it's because 20 minutes is all you need. You know, when I became a student of networking and started studying hundreds and hundreds of meetings and then testing my theories with other executives, testing my theories with people in transition, and sort of coming up with this structure, what I discovered is 20 minutes is all that most people need. It's a number, yes, it's provocative and tough, even for me, you know, to squeeze it all into 20, but that's the objective. It's a number that most people will say yes to when you ask. It's a number that shows that you're on topic and on task, you're prepared and you're organized. Because if I have a loosey-goosey meeting that runs an hour, it's going to be very tough for me to say I'm a well-organized person and have the other person believe it. But if I come in with a crisp, well-planned meeting, I don't even have to say I'm a well-organized person. They get it, right? So allow only 20 or 30 minutes for the meeting. And as a matter of fact, when you confirm the meeting, which I think we need to do the day before, see you tomorrow at the coffee shop or at your office or on Zoom, and resend the link. And let's meet between 8 and 8:30. Set the end time in addition to the beginning time. That's a great comfort person on the other end that knows that you have called the meeting and you're going to run the meeting. You know, that's sort of a intuitive no-brainer for all of us in organizations, right? You know, people ask you for a meeting, you expect them to come in and run the meeting. And so hence it is with networking. You've called the meeting, you're going to run the meeting. And in order to accomplish the things that we've said, learn a little, make a connection, do it well, you only need 20 to 30 minutes. So the question then bubbles up, how should I run the meeting? Marcia, you suggest that I run this meeting. You're going to do a handful of things. And this handful of things is the backbone and the structure for your meeting. Having a backbone and a structure for your meeting, I've found, takes some of the pressure off. I don't have to worry, is this thing going to go out of control? Am I going to go off track? What am I going to say next? But having a structure is, for most people, certainly the person on the other side of the desk, a comfort. And we can, once we get more comfortable with it, we can of course deviate, but we'll start with a really basic structure. The first thing I'm going to do, because there's sort of 5 parts. The first thing I'm going to do is have a first impression, which, you know, we all know first impressions are real. And I'm going to use those first couple of minutes to do the most important things. Number 1 is to start by reconnecting. If you were referred by Cassie Warner, you are going to reiterate in your greeting, great to see you. Once again, I was referred by Cassie, and she thought that the two of us would connect well over financial executive positions. Boy, she said that you are absolutely the best boss she ever worked for. And what she really appreciated was how closely you connected with all of the team, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see that I am mentioning the connection, and I'm building up their relationship. Always, I am building up the relationships of others. The second thing I'm going to do, make sure to say thank you. I can't tell you how many people I've networked, well, the vast majority of people that I've networked with over the last 25 years have left my office and never said thank you. We're not going to do that. We're going to say thank you 3 times throughout the conversation. And we're certainly going to start by saying thank you. I'm grateful for your time. I look forward to the conversation, and do that fairly immediately after reconnecting. And the last thing that I'm going to do in my first minute or 2 is to say, I've got a little plan for our conversation, or I have an agenda for our meeting, or what I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about myself, ask a few questions, and then I'll wrap up and be on my way. It's that simple. My agenda or my outline is that simple. I'm going to share a little bit about myself, or recap my background, or overview my narrative, whatever I want to say. I'm going to ask you a few questions because there's much that I want to learn about your impressive background. And then I'm going to wrap up. So, you know, those sort of 3 things are a mini agenda, but they're an agenda nonetheless. And the person on the other side of the desk, trust me, decompresses to know that you've got this, as opposed to the loosey-goosey meeting. I don't know where this is going to end. Marcia's just talking on and on. I'm nervous. I'm looking at my watch. I have other meetings. You've set it up that you own the meeting. You've got a plan, and we set up a really positive discussion. So that brings us to the answering the question of how do I run the meeting? I think about those a structured step. I mentioned that after I have an introduction, I am going to take some time to talk about myself. And a lot of people ask me, it's a common question. I hate talking about myself. How should I handle this? And I say, great. How much time should I talk about myself? In the 20-minute networking meeting model, the amount of time that I allot for us to talk about ourselves is 1 minute. And the only reason it's 1 minute is because I rounded up. And the amount of time that you truly need is about 30 seconds. So good news for those of us that aren't sure we want to sit and talk about ourselves for an hour. Good news for those of us that feel uncomfortable talking about myself, or it feels braggadocio or whatever. 1 minute is all we're going to talk about ourselves. And why is that? Because a reminder, this is not an interview. This is an overview. And the person on the other side of the desk is not making hiring decisions. They're not getting granular. They want to get to know you as a professional. And that just takes an overview. If I were doing a 20-minute networking meeting and I were networking for a board position, let's just say I'd like to add a small business board to my portfolio. And by the way, I'm giving a presentation tomorrow to the Women Corporate Directors Group about how to find board positions. And it's the same thing. You know, I'm going to change our conversation here today only by a smidge, because truly networking is the way that you find most board positions as well. But be that as it may, if I were talking to somebody about seeking a board position, I would say, you know, I've got 25 years in executive search and have founded 2 companies. I've been on a number of boards, 2 small business boards and a number of nonprofit boards. I have passion for these various areas. And what I bring to a board of directors, trust me, is not the finance and audit committee work, but it's going to be governance and nominating committee work and staff leadership input and things like that. Ideally, I would, you know, and I might say a little bit more about what I might be seeking. That's under 20 seconds of material. I would probably also have a written piece. In your case, it might be a resume or a one-pager or a board bio. And I've sent that in my request. I've sent that the day before when I confirm the meeting. And I probably have a copy if we're meeting in person to hand across the table if necessary. So when I am in my conversation, rest that you do not need to spend a lot of time bragging about yourself or remembering every aspect of your background. It's an overview. I've got 15 years in financial services, and I've worked primarily at Allianz, and I worked in the client service area. I manage a staff of 10. Right now, I'm seeking to learn about other opportunities in that space or tangential spaces. I'm also passionate about services to youth and families, or whatever it might be. But it's a smidgy sort of overview. Sometimes people call it an elevator speech. It's probably a little bit longer than an elevator speech, depending on, I suppose, if you're going up 40 floors, maybe that's an elevator speech. But I like having a sense of what my narrative might be. And it's short, and it's positive, and it's an overview. So going into the meeting, I mentioned that one thing we would want to do is to learn from the other person, thinking about my networking as not a job finding. Counterintuitively, if I go around asking people to find me a job, no one will find me a job. If I go around talking to people, honoring them and seeking their wisdom, I'll find a job. So how do I prepare to meet with people? People that maybe I haven't talked to in a while, people that are referred to me from others, because again, eventually that's going to be the vast majority of people that I connect with. How do I prepare? Yes, do take time to prepare for each networking meeting. Minimally, I will look at those individuals' background on LinkedIn. I'll look at the positions they've had, the organizations that they've worked with, possibly a background in terms of credentials. Maybe I'm thinking about getting a project management certificate, and I wonder about the value of that. I might ask folks that have that certification how they've used that, how important they think that is to someone in transition. I might ask folks about their own career, how they moved from the higher ed sector back into the manufacturing sector, what they found as learnings. Maybe I'm in higher ed and I'm seeking to go back to the manufacturing sector, and I might value their pointers. But think very specifically about what you want to learn from that person, from looking at their LinkedIn, from going to their organization's website if there's a bio, seeing the types of nonprofits that they might be connected to, places they've worked previously. They're really thinking through their background. What do I want to know from that person? Generic questions aren't as helpful. Generic questions such as, and here's the worst one, and it's probably the most common question that people have asked me over all these years, horrifyingly so, is, Marcia, how's the economy? That is a terrible question. We can all read the newspapers. We all have a sense of the economy. I can tell you that if a person is networking a lot and following up and working hard to grow their network, the economy is pretty good. If a person is at home, surfing the web and applying for jobs online exclusively as their job transition strategy, the economy is not going to be too good. So don't ask generic questions. The other thing to never ask, horrifyingly, this is the second most common question that people have asked me over the years, is plopping down in the chair and saying, so what do you do here at Ballinger Leafblad? That is not okay. You can imagine that's not okay. And as a matter of fact, I wrote an example in the book of a real live fellow search firm owner here in the Twin Cities. People would plop down and ask her, so what do you do here at the XYZ search firm? And what she said is, and I'll never forget it because it's pretty pointed and we'll all relate. She says, did you go to our company website? And she said, there's a long, painful pause. The person says, no, I didn't. And she says, why not? That's a really fair question, isn't it? When I'm asking someone to stop the middle of their busy workday and take time to meet with me. The minimum that I need to do is go to their LinkedIn. The minimum I need to do is look at their website to honor the time that they are giving to me. So learn from those that made that mistake with my colleague, and we will not do that. We'll always prepare. I had a networking meeting once with a guy, and we met at a restaurant. He came flying in at the last second, and he was really busy, and I totally get it. There were things going on in his life. And right before the meeting, he printed out my LinkedIn and he had it in front of him. And I thought, you know what? In the world's worst pinch, that's certainly better than, global meaningless questions. He was looking at my LinkedIn in the moment. And I thought, you know what? Bully for him for being creative in a pinch. So absolutely do your preparation. Have some questions that are uniquely tailored to that person. This is your first time to talk to that person, maybe your only, but hopefully just your first. What do you want to learn from them? Somebody's asked a question about their occupation as administrative assistant has transferable skills for multiple industries, and that's true. A person in an engineering field with really specific background in plastics may or may not transfer to the wood industry, but certain occupations like administrative expertise, maybe financial expertise, sometimes human resources expertise can be transferable. There will come a point where it can't be transferable, right? Maybe I'm not a chief of staff, but I am an executive assistant. Where are the opportunities? Where are any boundaries where my background wouldn't be as close a fit? What am I missing? And those are fair questions for your network. And as a matter of fact, people sometimes call me and they say, oh, Lord, I got a big, broad background. How do I know where to plop myself in? And I say, you know what? Your network knows. Your network absolutely knows the answer to that question. So let's just say, Judy, and thank you for the question. It's really a good one. You are meeting with people who are executive administrative assistants, have hired executive administrative assistants, have an executive administrative assistant, are a retired administrative assistant. And it's a really fair question to say to those folks in your network, here's where I'm thinking I might plug in. How do you react to that? Am I missing something? Are there some types of organizations? Here's my one pager with my target company list and my target industry list. Am I missing something from your perspective? And the earlier on I am in my networking, the more I might have questions like that, right? If I'm 40 cups of coffee away from my next perfect opportunity, which most of us are probably X number of cups of coffee away from our next perfect opportunity. My first 5 networking meetings might have questions like, here's the industries I'm thinking, but what other ones might you add to that based on your outstanding experience? Or I really respect that you've worked in these industries. What have you found to be tangential to that, where my skills might also apply? So Judy, you bring up a very important point that the questions might be about a person's specific unique background, but it might also be gaining their wisdom about the sector or gaining their wisdom about the function, in this case, administrative assistant work. Yeah, thank you for that. And that might be part of when you prepare for a meeting. I think preparation includes having at least 3 questions ready to ask the person about their background. And I may, Harry, goodness, you've got over 30 years in the executive search field. I'm interested, I do internal recruiting inside organizations, hypothetically question. How might you see how internal recruiters work with external recruiters and how that's changed over time, or something like that? I'm something very specific to that person's background. Or Joe, you have achieved the SPHR certification. I'm thinking about sitting for that, and I'm wondering how you have found that certification useful in your background. Those types of specific questions, but also maybe some general questions such as those that I suggested for Judy about, here's what I'm thinking, what am I missing? Here's what I'm thinking in terms of where my background might fit the best. Anything to add to that? Or even the general question, I'm just starting my networking. Where could you see me plugging in? Maybe an early career person might ask that question. Maybe somebody who, as Harry mentioned, I've written about people who seek to move into the nonprofit sector. If I'm a sector switcher, in any way, I want to move from banking to being an elementary ed teacher, that's a switcher too. The question might be, I'm thinking about making this switch, and here's how I'm visualizing that. Where could you see me plugging in is a very fair question, particularly of my first several networking meetings. So all of those things are part of my preparation, is having those questions prepared. Now, how I ask the question can also be important, making sure that the person understands why I'm asking. Marcia, you've worked in human resources before getting into executive search. I'm looking at a career in human resources, and I'm wondering what sorts of organizations I might consider joining or looking into. So have a prepared question, state a bit about the other person and sort of why you've chosen that question. Those are very powerful. Those are honoring, those are wisdom seeking, those are respect giving sorts of questions. And once again, asking somebody, do you have a job? Where's the job? Can you find me a job? Is never an allowable question. That makes the person sort of back up and feel uncomfortable. But when you say, wow, I'm so impressed by your background, I truly respect all of the work that you've done. I see the considerable number of awards that you've won. You'll see the person, yeah, I'll tell you all about that. So that's the posture that we've got for our networking meetings. And so we come into the networking meeting with some prepared questions that are unique for that person. The fourth question that I always want to ask is about adding to my network. And adding to my network is usually people. And that can be a tough one to say to someone, who else do you think I should call? So help the person out by adding specificity. And counterintuitively, the more specific you are, the more likely you'll get some recommendations. So you may say, I am an attorney and I practice in the East Metro. Are there any folks that, fit that category that you think I might connect with? Or I'm very highly interested in running programs at a nonprofit that's related to youth work, like the Y or Boys and Girls Clubs and those types of things. Anything in that realm working with youth that you might know anyone. So prime the pump by giving the person some specificity, if you can. I see that you graduated from St. Olaf. Is there anyone in that St. Olaf network that you think I might connect with? That's helpful. If you can't think of anything, if you're absolutely blank, ask a generic question. I'm seeking to grow my network. Is there anyone else that you think I should touch base with? That's kind of the minimally acceptable question. Ask the question every time. And the reason I say that is that someone who says yes to a networking meeting probably assumes you're going to ask them. And as a very good friend of mine once said to me, I always go into a networking meeting in the back of my mind thinking who else I might recommend. But if they don't ask, I don't tell. So make sure you ask. And you know what? There are times where someone will say, you know what? I am a neonatal nurse. I'm connecting with others in that field. And it just happens to be a field where I don't know anyone. And so I think, shoot, if I can't think of a person, I might think of a group. Have you tried networking in this particular organization? Or I see that you live in the South Metro. There's a really active chamber. They have a networking group at this faith community. I know everyone will always do their best to think about a group or an idea, or gosh, can't think of anyone at the moment, but I'll keep my eyes open is also a very fair response. Judy asks, is it fair to expect a job title from a networking meeting? I'll answer it based on what I think you're asking, but yell if it's something else. It's sure, I'm networking, I'm getting into the job transition right now, and I'm talking to organizations in the banking industry where I've got a community banking background. The job titles that I'm tending to see that seem to be a fit for my background are community banker, bank president, manager of community banking. Are those the right types of positions based on my background as you see it? So sure, you can kind of test those things with your network as well. And testing and getting people's input is a pretty honoring question, isn't it? Based on your expertise, do you see these are as the job families that you would recommend for me? Am I missing something? Is absolutely a fair question. And again, lastly, never be afraid to ask to add to your network. I'm seeking to add to my network and wondering who you might suggest from your participation in FEI, your networking. I see that you're an alum of University of Minnesota Duluth. If there's anyone in that category, never be ashamed to ask that question. Another question that people ask of me a lot is, if we can even articulate it, but it's real, I hate asking for help. And that was mentioned in the video too, wasn't it? How difficult it was for her to reach out and ask for help. I think what that reminded me is that it's a fairly universal feeling, because in our professional life, we've got a quid pro quo sort of a relationship with most people. And when I am in a job transition and I'm asking for a person's time and I'm asking for a person's wisdom, it makes me feel, by definition, down a peg. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of us. So I put that out there because it's very real. And a couple of things. Number one, I'm only asking for 20 minutes. That feels better than asking for an hour. So there's that. Number two, I'm going to say thank you 3 times throughout the meeting. I'm going to make sure that gratitude is part of my equation. I am going to uphold the person's relationship with the referral source. And boy, their relationship, both in my emails and in my interpersonal communication. And if it makes me feel better, well, always in every networking meeting, I'm going to ask the question, how can I help you in return? Go into that networking meeting with your head held high as the professional that you are and ask, how could I help you in return? Be prepared for them to say, hey, you know, I have a question about this, or do you know anyone over there? Or could I send you something over here? That's the baseline question. How can I help you in return? I'm so grateful. Thank you so very much. If possible, you know, just like adding to your network, if you can add specificity to the question, so much the better. If, you know, I can see that you are on the board of the Red Cross and you've got some events coming up. Could I help you promote those on my LinkedIn? Or I see that you are, you like to be a trendsetter with regard to leadership. You post a lot of outstanding material about leadership. I've brought you a paperback book that literally is hot off the press about leadership that I think you'll enjoy. You know, sometimes investing in, you know, again, whether it be a book, whether it be, you know, I see that you have a sweet tooth, and I brought you some chocolates from my favorite local company. If that makes us feel a whole lot better, more confident, more equal. Like I say, minimally ask the question, maybe thinking specifically about ways that you could help that person. And then maybe it's a physical thing. And that might be enough to really make a difference in how I feel in the networking relationship. And if so, I'd say do that. The last question that I often get asked is, you know, how can I make networking a way of life? Because when you get your next perfect opportunity, and you will come out of the time of transition with an incredible gift and many gifts. One of them will be this network of people. The network of people who said yes, the network of people who linked with you, the network of people who sent you ideas, the network of people who listened to you. And that is a gift that you'll want to cultivate and nourish in the years going forward. These are the same people you can reach out to when you're landed in your new job a year later, if you have a thorny problem and you value their wisdom. This is someone that you might invite to a conference. This is someone who you might send some information. So on an ongoing basis, thinking about that group as a true asset to you as a professional. I like networking to be a structured part of my life. Harry and I were talking about having a lot of networking meetings every week with individuals. Harry's quite active on LinkedIn, so am I. If you've had a LinkedIn expert talk to the group, they probably talk about making LinkedIn a daily or, you know, certainly a few times a week, structured time where every single week I do a few things. I present some trend-setting information in my field so I can be seen as a thought leader. I recognize and uphold someone else for a promotion, including an image, linking and tagging and linking and tagging. I put something out there maybe about myself that I've learned, something I've attended. So it's a bit about myself, upholding others, putting out trend-setting information that others might find interesting and learn from, tagging, 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 and hashtagging all over the place, so that I have this real connection with others through LinkedIn that can be very, very meaningful. And if I ever apply for a job, trust me when I say the first thing everyone's going to do is look at your LinkedIn. So having a robust LinkedIn that matches your resume, that shows your thoughts and your connections, et cetera, is very, very important. The other thing, in addition to the LinkedIn, is getting out and attending large group sessions like this morning, like topics in your field, in-person events, online events, promoting those after the fact, maybe sharing a bit of wisdom, but using large groups to make connections. People say, I've run out of network. I got no more friends, I got no more network. And that may be, so get out and start attending events. And when I attend an event, my groups are the HR Executive Forum, for one, Team Women Minnesota. So I've got my groups that I go to. And when I go to those groups, I love joining in with people, see a few people talking, and I say, may I join in? In my 63 years of life, no one has ever said no. Having meaningful conversations, stepping away, typing in their name, jotting down, and I'm old fashioned. I keep a business card in my pocket and I'm writing down everyone's name that I met. I link with them that night, how great it was to meet them, what an interesting thing on the speaker, what a great event, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe I also say, hey, I'd love to have a cup of coffee sometime, virtual or in person. And I nurture that relationship of someone that I met. We have a common interest because we attended something together into a networking conversation. So I think about networking as individual meetings. Yes, critically important. I need many of those a week. Networking in large groups to continue to add people to my network, and having a networking online. Truly, networking is a way of life. And when I am in transition, it is maybe the most important part of my way of life. It's certainly a topic that is near and dear to me because of what I have seen happen in people's lives through networking. So going back to what we started with, you people that are joined today got up this morning not to be mediocre, but to be excellent and to be top of mind and top of information when it comes to networking, the most important thing you can do in your transition. Hats off to all of you. I would love to link with all of you, so please do that. If there are other questions, I will see if Harry will allow us to take a couple of questions before we end our conversation today.
Certainly, take questions. There is one that I think is appropriate for people to figure out. She says, when upholding the relationship in an email for next networking follow-up, is it appropriate to copy the previous network contact that created the connection, and what's appropriate?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Thank you so much. Maybe I'll wrap up on that question because it's such a good question. And it is so core to networking success. Here's what we do. Let's just say that my neighbor, Sarah, refers me to her colleague, Mark, and says, you really should talk to Mark. He's the CEO of a small organization in the packaging industry. And I know that you have experience in that industry. I think you'd get along really well. Mark is the sharpest, nicest guy with the best sense of humor of anyone I've met. All right. I listened. And so I contact Mark and I say, I was referred to you by Sarah. She said that you've got an outstanding background in packaging and you are one of the funniest people that she has ever met. I would love to meet for 20 minutes. I've got some questions based on your outstanding background. I really respect all that you've done in your business. Wondering if we might meet anytime at your convenience, et cetera, et cetera. You've attached your resume. The Mark gets back to you and says, yes, let's meet in 3 weeks. Let's set up the meeting. The absolute first thing I do is I get back to Sarah. The first thing I do is get back to Sarah. Sarah, thank you so incredibly much. Mark has agreed to meet with me in 3 weeks. Probably in his message, he said something about Sarah. Sarah was absolutely the best. We had the A team when we worked together. I'm going to share that back, right? Because my job is to be an upholder. And I say, Sarah, thank you so much. Mark shared that the two of you absolutely had the A team working together. He's meeting with me in 3 weeks. I'm thrilled. I'm so grateful. Thank you so very much. The day before, I reconfirm with Mark, send once again attached my resume or my bio. I meet with Mark. And remember, one of the first things I'm going to do when I walk in the door or start the Zoom is to say thank you again so much. Sarah, just to remind you, is my neighbor. We've lived together here in the neighborhood for 20 years. We walk our dogs together. She couldn't say enough about you. After the meeting, when Mark has given me his time, I've learned some things. We had a really good connection. I follow up with a thank you to Mark, and I just hit send, and then I immediately send a message to Sarah with my gratitude to Mark for the referral to Mark. And very specifically, Mark was really kind in sharing with me how he moved in a variety of sectors, how he applied his background in actuarial science in a number of different ways, whatever it might be, before he got into starting this business, whatever it might be. Thank you so incredibly much. It was a great connection. So you can see that I've got that inclusion of Sarah throughout the communication. And I bet Harry gave me a name. Same thing. I'm going to follow up with Janice, and I'm going to talk about Harry, and I'm going to immediately get back to Harry and let him know that I'm going to meet with Janice. I'm so excited. Thank you again. And so that is my circle of connection. It's critically important. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. I will stop for now. I have gone over my my time that Harry has graciously given, and I look forward to staying in touch with all of you through LinkedIn, and hopefully our paths will cross in the future.
Thanks so much, Marcia. There's so many things you talk about. I'm just thinking, yes. I'm tempted to, next time I have a networking meeting, to tell the person, watch this video first, and then let's talk after that. But you're right on so many things. And the follow-up is so important. Sometimes you get more leads and referrals from the second or third contact than you did the first time around. And so it's not just a one-hit wonder. And there's somebody I heard from someone else before that I think encompasses a lot of what you talk about, is always ask for AIR, an acronym AIR, asking for advice, insight, and referrals. And that's kind of the approach you want to take in your networking. But you laid it out so well, and I'm grateful for your time and expertise this morning. I hope it's been very worthwhile for all the people here. I just want to take a few minutes here shortly to give you an overview of everything that's available through Crossroads. We have these monthly webinars, for one, obviously, but actually 3 webinars per month. But we have a number of other things we offer as well. And I really encourage you to take advantage of all of it that you can. It's all free. And it's, I think, so important to be plugged in with other people and keep getting additional content that helps you get better at your job search all the time. I think for most people, they're just not sure what are the best things to do next, or how do I do this effectively? And am I spending my time appropriately? Am I doing things in a way that are going to get results for me? And so we have a number of ways you can do that, and I want to run through that real quick. Let me share a screen here, and I've got a few slides, and we'll just take a few minutes here and let you go. But for one thing, if this is your first time on one of our webinars, you'll be receiving in the mail in the next several days here a book called How Long, Oh Lord, How Long? It's a tremendous devotional for the unemployed and for those who love them. But there's an index in the back, and you can look up, what am I feeling, or what am I struggling with, or what are the questions I have in terms of my job search. And there's it'll direct you to specific devotionals that will address those for you. I'm just so grateful we're able to provide that for you, and we'll be getting that out in the mail, like I say, in the next few days here. Wait a second. There we go. I'm sure in order to register for this webinar today, you've been on our website, at least on the one page, but I encourage you to take a little bit of time to peruse our website, mncrossroads.com. And there's a ton of information there and resources, and it explains all of our other things that we offer and the schedules and how to take advantage of them. Everything we're doing right now is online. We're not meeting in person for things, although that we hope to do that again soon. But we also have a job board on there. We have a number of companies that know what we do and know that there's great people that take part in Crossroads. And so they post jobs specifically to help out and to find great people. So check out what's on there. We have a variety of things that come up. And hopefully you can find something there that you can take advantage of. Most of the postings, not all of them, but most of them, we ask the employers to put a contact name and contact information. So you have somebody to reach out to ask questions or to follow up, so that it's not just applying to black holes online, but you can actually get someone to talk to. And so take advantage of what's there. On a weekly basis, there's multiple ways you can take advantage of the things we do with Crossroads. And one of them is every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. So following this presentation, we have our Networking with Grace group, and it's networking. It's on a Zoom meeting, and so you need to register online beforehand. You can do that through the website. And it's a chance to share leads, get contact names and information, help others, and get helped in the process. It's led by Wes Tang and Wes Roper. We call them Wes 1 and Wes 2, but I really appreciate those guys because they try to make sure everybody walks out with something each week. They provide a great deal of hope and encouragement in the process, and they help people be more effective in their networking. And so check it out. It's online every Thursday morning. You can go every week or as often as you like, and it's a great way to stay plugged in. If you want to talk through your situation with somebody individually, we have one-on-one coaching available. You can sign up online and one of our volunteers will follow up with you and set up a time for a Zoom meeting or a phone conversation. And you can talk to them if you want them to review your resume and give you some pointers, or if you have an interview coming up and you want to help them with how to prepare or to do some mock interview practice, to talk more about how to network effectively, or just to talk through your situation. I think so many times people struggle with having somebody to kind of process their circumstances with somebody that gets it. And so take advantage of that as often as you like. You can see all the details online. This process of a job search is an emotional roller coaster. I'm sure most of you have experienced that already, and getting some stability and some spiritual support in the process, I think, is a tremendous resource. And I'm grateful. We have a team of people that just love to pray for you. And so there's a prayer request page on our website. You can find that. Or if you want somebody that you can interact with and talk to on a regular basis to kind of help you through the emotional and spiritual challenges of this, we have our soul care group for Crossroads as well. And so you can find the details of that and sign up on the website. Or if you just want to ask questions about that, you can get that through the website and asking someone as well. So take advantage of those things. But the meat and potatoes, or where you can get the most help on an ongoing basis, is through our online classes. We have small group classes through Zoom as well. They're anywhere from 6 to 15 people, and we go through a workbook, but it's a lot of discussion about every aspect of an effective job search, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind so you can present yourself as positively as possible, and doing some assessments so you can have some greater self-awareness and be able to articulate what makes you unique in your networking and in your interviews. We talk a lot about networking and targeting companies and how to do that effectively. We talk about resume best practices and how to make sure yours is as effective as it can be. We talk about interviewing situations and how to address different things and challenges that you'll face there, and talking about negotiating and selecting the right job, and so much more. And as strong as the content is, and I think the content gives you a great amount of confidence of how to do a job search effectively, I think equally important is that weekly check-in with other people that are in the same boat, and having that light accountability and encouragement and hope that moral support that you get from others. I think it's so important to stay plugged in with other people through this process. You know, I think our communication skills are a muscle that you either use it or lose it. And if you're spending the majority of your time behind a computer screen, and then all of a sudden you have a networking meeting or an interview, you're not going to be at your best. And so the more you can engage with other people and communicate effectively, you're going to be at your best. Throughout the 8 weeks, we also talk about God's perspective of your job search and your life. And I think that is such a key component to leading things well. So we have new classes that begin every month. You can see the details on the website and register there. I really encourage you to take advantage of that. That's really where you can get the most help that I think makes you much more effective in your search. If you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to join our LinkedIn group. If you put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box on LinkedIn, you'll find us, and sign up there. You'll get approved to be in, and there's multiple things. One is all kinds of things get posted there. Information about other resources, about upcoming events through Crossroads. There's some recruiters that post jobs in there periodically. But there's also getting close to, I think, 2,500 people in there, people that have been through Crossroads and want to be of help. They've landed, obviously the vast majority of them have landed in new positions, and they're willing to be contacts at their companies. So you can look through the other members of the group and see who might be working at companies that you're interested in, and reach out to them just to get that advice, insight, and referrals within the organization. And that's the best way you can be of help to others and give back after you've landed into a job, is just stay in the group and be willing to take calls or be contacted by others that are looking for help as well. And I often get asked from people, how can they give back? And this is one of the best ways to do it. So join our LinkedIn group, take advantage of the resources there. This webinar and all of our previous ones are posted on our YouTube channel. And there too, if you put MN Crossroads Career Network into the search box in YouTube, you'll find us, and you'll see all of our webinars, online webinars from the last 3 years, and all kinds of topics that are covered there with great speakers. And I encourage you to take advantage of that as often as you'd like, and find topics that are important to you to be able to answer some questions for yourself. So check that out. And as I said, this one will be posted before the end of the day today, and you'll be able to review anything that you may have missed watching this today. As an additional resource, Thrivent has been a great partner to us for quite a long time, and I'm grateful for all that they've done. They contribute money and resources for us, but they also have a 3 webinar series each month on financial considerations during your job search. And these are not sales presentations for Thrivent by any means. They're really practical help, and to think about how you can save money during your job search, ways you can adjust your budget, ways that you can get help and resources, how to think about your 401k you may have left behind, how to prepare for your next job. And so check those out. You can sign up through our website for those as well. There's, as I mentioned, 3 webinars each month that they go through. And I think they're a great resource, and I'm grateful for Thrivent for providing that for us. There are over 40 people that volunteer for Crossroads in one way or another. There's no way we could do all the things we offer if it wasn't for the help of a lot of people. And I'm grateful for every one of them that give of their time and effort and expertise, and have been a great help. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's not just a couple of people that you see on screen periodically that make all this happen, but there's a lot of people in the background and a lot of people that engage pretty significantly. And I would just want to acknowledge and thank them for their time. If you don't have a church home, I encourage you to visit one of our churches on a Sunday morning. When we meet in person, there are 3 churches where we have Crossroads offered: Woodbury Lutheran Church in Woodbury, North Heights Church in Arden Hills, and Grace Church in Eden Prairie. And we each have services streaming online, but certainly meeting in person, and really encourage you to engage with a church community where you can get encouragement and hope and friendships and people that are in your corner. And so find a place that you can attend regularly and get plugged in with a church community. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. Let me stop sharing screen here and encourage you to take advantage of our next webinar coming up Thursday morning, April 6th. And that is going to feature Dale Henry, who talks about activate your real world superpowers. And if you haven't seen Dale Henry before, I really encourage you to do that. He's very entertaining. He's a great speaker and funny, but he really talks about, each one of us have strengths and abilities and skills and experience that make us unique and give us an edge and a superpower compared to other people. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what those are or how to articulate them or how to find things that take the most advantage of what those strengths are. And so Dale is going to talk about all of that. It's absolutely a worthwhile topic and presentation you don't want to miss. So join us Thursday morning, April 6th for that. Hope this was worthwhile for you today. I hope you got a lot out of it. And Marcia, I think, is tremendous. She does say, certainly feel free to reach out and connect with her on LinkedIn. I would include a note with your connection request to say you saw her this morning on the Crossroads webinar, but she is always very willing to help out with networking. So reach out to her there and connect and stay in touch. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, Harry Urschel, and I'm glad to connect and help any way I can too. Take advantage of other Crossroads events, and thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great day and a great weekend coming up.